Welcome to the Feral Tarot,
a podcast where we talk about psychology, magic, the occult, kink, and other high weirdness through the lens of the tarot.
We are working our way through the deck by way of the Fool's Journey, alternating those major arcana cards with shuffled pulls from the small cards of the deck. Today we're exploring the Ten of Wands, Oppression. We explore the heaviness of this card and how to find the lighter spots in its somewhat intimidating symbolism.
And a heavy card it was. You'll notice the density in the trudging pace of this episode. But we'll get into concepts like oppression as it applies to government and social structures, as well as the internal oppression we apply to ourselves. We also talk about the clawing, stupid nature of evil and how to escape that grasp.
We find ourselves musing on the role of conflict in love, the vulnerability of being willing to wade into psychological sludge for the collective good, and whether the boiling pressure of the cruelty our culture applies will be our end, or can we let it turn us sweeter and more concentrated like a delicious liberation maple syrup?
As we get started, as always, we want to acknowledge that the Feral Tarot is recorded on stolen Ohlone land and offer our thanks and respect to their elders, past and present.
As we move through the tarot, we want to hold awareness for the ways the system has been shaped by colonization and imperialism.
And with that, let's get into the Ten of Wands.
Yeah, that was one of the things in the Marie von Franz projection lens of, thinking about the card and oppression, cruelty. What is the Thoth one? Is it oppression?
Oppression, yeah.
Yeah, like the ways we internalize that, and then the ways other people internalize it, and then this like fucked up hall of mirrors where it gets projected outward.
So wait, yeah. How do you tie that back to the card?
Of what we were talking about?
Yeah. You don't have to get into specifics since this is for the episode, not the bonus content.
Yeah.
But
this is the PG and not the feet version.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of how I would articulate it. I think about this a lot in, I guess, like the kink context of the existential kink of like bids for power, when we in the face of chaos and like uncertainty and fear, and in those like vulnerable moments that our like primal afraid animal brain is going to grasp onto, like lashing out, like wanting to like understand, to finding cause for something that's happening when often there's no cause. It's just people being people. And like the only thing we can ever really figure out is like, oh, what's going on with me? And like, why did I do that? And you can drive yourself nuts trying to imagine ways that like, why did this other person do this thing? Like it's very difficult, if not impossible, to ever really get a satisfying, unless they actually directly communicate with you, which is a beautiful thing. But if for someone who is not in that place, like you can't, it's just all like kind of fantasy and projections of like, oh, this is why they did that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And also interesting that you mentioned the clawing aspect of it.
Grasping, yeah.
Yeah, when I was looking into a little bit more on the cards, someone was talking about the Thoth deck. I don't know if it's actually in the Thoth, in any of the literature for it, but they had mentioned how the ends of the wands in the 10, or at least the 8 suppressed wands.
Yeah, have claws.
Have claws. Yeah, I didn't even look at it as claws. I was like, oh, yeah, it's like flames. And their dignities have been removed. Like, they don't... they typically, throughout the rest of the deck, have, like, a head.
Yeah.
Or, like, some kind of indication that it's a scepter of great power, but like this has all of the heads chopped off, and instead there's claws. So it's just this oppressed force like clawing for whatever it can get.
It's like the higher mind has been cut off, and you're left with the animalistic, grasping, clawing. I have a literal grasping, clawing animal in my lap right now. Crowley. That's very relevant.
Yeah. Jesus. Yeah, we're both feeling the 10 of Wands lately, it seems like. So maybe let's talk a little bit about what the 10 of Wands looks like. We just talked about it for the Thoth deck. We have 8 wands with their heads cut off, replaced by claws, being oppressed by 2 heavy black bar-like wands. And it looks like they have like jinn on their heads. That's what I
like a demon.
Yeah. I think they're black to represent Saturn, which is a very oppressive force on its own. But that's the Thoth one. We also have the classic Rider-Waite, where we're dealing with someone who's just overburdened with a bunch of wands.
My Rider-Waite has an old man. He actually doesn't look as terrified as one might expect, or burdened as one might expect for this card. He looks kind of beleaguered, and there's a castle in the distance. So it's, I don't know. What's your take on that?
Oh, interesting. It looks like he has some hope, which I guess is another thing to speak to it being like a 10, is like this part's over or almost over. I think about this, what this one's like telling me is he's old because he's been carrying these wands for like so fucking long, and his back is like bent as a result. Like he couldn't stand up straight if he wanted to.
It makes me think about how like much stress ages you. Like even if
my God, right?
Even if you're not old in years, you can be old through, life bearing down on you. And that's what I get from this a little bit. And there is kind of like the hope for, again, like there's always the cycle of like what's going to come next. And then in the marigolds, the way that the wands are arranged, it always evokes like the phrase like it's curtains, like the curtain is falling, because they're all arranged vertically at the top, and they're kind of falling over the stage. They're kind of falling over the rest of the card. So it's curtains for whatever this chapter of life was, and it's kind of like the heaviness too. Like if we think about like oppression. There's like a heaviness to like that big, thick velvet curtain that blocks out the light, just falling over everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it straight up looks like curtains. Yeah, it kind of speaks to the like overpowering, enveloping sense of it, the oppression of it.
Yep.
Yeah, this card is pretty clear, where some of them seem to be like a little more vague.
The Thoth, I think the phrase that I kind of most sticks with me with this one is the lust of result. Did you find anything about that did that phrase come out to you?
Yeah, that tracks for me. I feel like that lust of result, overwhelming, speaks to one of the things that I was referring to in a past couple of episodes about how this is like fire, like pure will, being brought down into Malkuth and like trying to exist there. It hasn't like taken the time to process through the other elements. It's just fire being brought down directly to earth. So it's like being overburdened by these practical material forces, that it doesn't interact with those. Like it needs to go through all of the other elements before it can, manifest.
Yeah. So here's the full phrase that Crowley describes the card. The whole picture suggests oppression and repression. It is a stupid and obstinate cruelty from which there is no escape. It is will which has not understood anything beyond its dull purpose, its lust of result, and it will devour itself in the conflagrations it has evoked. Which is a very poetic way to say, like, this is a lot. This is heavy. It's destructive.
It's stupid.
Stupid and obstinate cruelty. It's kind of like petty feels like too light of a word, but it's kind of like it's like kind of like a cosmic like temper tantrum. It feels like is what it might evoke. It's like blind force. Like in Malkuth, which is the tens. It's dependent on the other higher Sephiroth, but is not connected to them. So it's kind of this like, blind force.
The stupid and obstinate part is interesting, and it's bringing to mind the disappointment of living in a world where we do have like more or less supervillains, but they're like really fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. In fiction, the oppressor is competent usually. I feel like they're not as bumbling as the oppressors that we're facing these days. Like it's kind of embarrassing. But maybe that is the nature of oppression, because like if you are competent,
you don't need to do all that.
You don't need to do all that. Yeah. You see that oppression doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of the like paradox of it, of the fear-based rationale, the fear-based attempt to control like is domination and then leads to oppression, which is, it's like unsustainable. It's not actually an effective way of relating or garnering any sort of like collective change or collective power. It's stupid.
This card's fucking stupid. And I guess I've been kind of wondering about how Sagittarius comes into this too. The card is Saturn and Sagittarius. Saturn is obvious. Like, this is a card that's bound. It's
the two black wands right in the middle, like prison bars.
Yeah.
Lon Milo Duquette says, Saturn's iron heel brutally pins poor Sagittarius to the floor of inflexible Malkuth.
So Sagittarius being fire. Yeah. Sagittarius just wants to play.
Yeah, it's the lightest and most ethereal of the fire signs.
Yeah. It's here for, I don't know. I'm biased because I have Venus in Sagittarius, so I love Sagittarians, but like...
Is Sagittarius the like the centaur?
Yeah, the archer.
The archer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of also like the healer.
Yeah. There's a healer aspect to him. I tend to like associate him with like a doctor archetype for sure, and then like a teacher. Mm-hmm. I think of them as like the fun professor, like who's at parties, but like it's not weird. They're like cool. Mm-hmm. Or, I mean, probably the other side of that too. Nothing's as one-lensed as that. Crowley is really in your feet right now. Is he just sniffing?
He's like holding it and sniffing. He probably smells my dogs.
A little freak.
You little freak?
Little freak.
Yeah, I don't know that much about Sagittarius. I don't know where I have Sag in my chart. Look at him tenderly holding.
There's some feet pics that might come out just for this episode so we can illustrate.
The more we keep talking about it, the more it feels like it's gonna...
Well, yeah, we got to create the demand.
Yeah, we got to talk it out. Okay, so it feels heavy to even literally just talk through it. In the Rust Belt, this card is called Despondence, which I think speaks to like the kind of softer side of like obstinance is cruelty. Like despondence is kind of like what makes like, it's interesting that there's like a hopefulness, and then there's also like the struggle to maintain the hope, like to just collapse. I think collapse is also a term that comes up when I think of this card.
Which
like the burden.
That's interesting because like with oppression, like if you're being like held
Weighed
tightly
down.
in something and held down, the sense of those like wands like melting into or just like releasing themselves into water to like then bring about the Ace of Cups.
Yes.
That image comes to mind of like this oppression, this like feeling of like fighting and then dissolving into despondence of like, well, I guess I'm fucked, which eventually leads to acceptance.
Yeah. And like clarity.
Yeah.
The clarity and the purity of the Ace of Cups. Yeah, and I think too about like the pressure that makes a diamond, like turns coal into diamonds. I was thinking about like the sap from a maple tree, like being boiled into like sugar, into syrup. So there's this way in which like overwhelming force, like what does that lead us to?
Fun fact, I learned that it takes 40 gallons of sap to make 1 gallon of syrup. Shit's crazy.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. How do those trees do it?
Oppression.
What do we say would be like an upside to this card if you were to get oppression in reverse or the Ten of Wands reverse? Does that mean you're the oppressor and things are good for you?
I don't know. See, I guess like that's another interesting angle to look at is like, are you actually in a position of benefit as an oppressor?
Yeah,
like
right.
I think like from the oppressed stance, you think of it as like in this dual sense of like, oh, well, they're benefiting from my oppression, which like in some very basic senses is true. And we can see that in a lot of, social hierarchies, capitalism, all of that. But from like a collective sense, no one is really benefiting from like an unsustainable, stupidly cruel system where, the environment is collapsing. Social systems are being gutted. Like there's no collective gain in that from like a holistic sense. Like, are you are the oppressive class looking forward to being like holed up in bunkers as like the world burns? Like, is that the end that we're really excited for them about? Like, or that we hope for?
There's a Bible verse actually I came across recently that was like this thing. It was like, fuck. I don't remember.
We'll find it later.
I'm going to attempt it. I don't know what book it's from, but basically it was like, woe are those who join house to house and field to field, for they will eventually be like totally alone. I think it said totally alone was the quote. But yeah, the idea of like, if you buy up everything, you take over everything, there's nothing but you. You're going to be like totally alone. Mm-hmm. And even if there is nothing but you, like, or even if there isn't nothing but you and you don't destroy everything else, like you are alone because no one wants to be around you. Like fucking Elon Musk is like clawing to be like cool and accepted. And it's almost sad if he wasn't such a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But like he's like clawing for this acceptance so hard, but it constantly driving himself further from it.
I mean, and like I think that's like the paradox too of like the fear that something will be taken away from you then induces the grasping, and then the grasping is so off-putting to everyone that you're taking from that you end up creating the situation that on some deep level no human really wants to be like that, reviled and alone, hated by your own family and lots of other people. Like it's just like that's not on like a pure primal human level of like connection and like tribal belonging. that's like a deeply unsettling place to be in, and it's only because of like the false security of like capital and like materialism that isn't like inducing death. So it's like probably a really uncomfortable place to be in, to be like materially secure, but on a deep level feel so like unsafe.
Yeah.
Presumably.
That is a super ingrained fear in humans of like not being accepted and not being in the in group, because
that's death.
Yeah, that's death. We developed to be in the in group, to like we basically domesticated ourselves to cohere, thank you, with other humans. What an oppression brought upon one by their own oppression. So oppression seems to always have this clawing aspect to it. Like it's come up several times as we've been going through this conversation, like that grasping, clawing, like insecure feeling is what brings about oppression.
Yeah, and I think like if you have the people around you to kind of mirror like, okay, like that's not actually necessary, like it's okay, that's like how you unwind that pattern. And like I think how, not that there's like quote unquote like normal people would respond and interact like in a belonging, healthy, like communal setting, you can like acknowledge that that's happening and then be like, actually it's okay. But I think if there's a situation where there's so much hierarchy and detachment from like healthy human community, then you end up with Elon Musk, like, and the hierarchy of anyone else who has like an absurd amount of sway in other people's lives. Like it detaches from any sort of meaningful reality. Like isn't that not what oppression, like when we think of on being on the receiving end, you're like, why would you ever think this is a good idea?
Yeah, right. It's such a heavy concept.
It is very heavy.
Yeah. Like as we're talking about it, I'm just like, I don't have responses for things, because I'm just like, yeah, fuck.
I guess one thing I could dig out that this card also made me think of is, do you know the book Rest is Resistance?
I've heard the title before as a concept. I didn't know there was a book.
Yeah, so Trisha Hersey, founder of the NAP Ministry.
NAP Ministry?
The NAP Ministry, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I think this kind of whole concept started because she was doing these, I don't want to call it performance art, but it was like a community gathering, basically creating spaces for people to nap. Like it was like, I'm going to create this space, I'm going to facilitate this, make it comfortable and pleasant, and people can just come nap. And it was also specifically rooted in like resistance to like the generational ideas of like slavery and racism, specifically of like as a Black woman, her upbringing in academia and being burnt out and being a mother. So it was like, how do we like reclaim rest? I think we talked about this with the Fool, with like the like empty spaces. And yeah, so this is like a whole concept of like rest as a way to resist oppression. So it literally says oppression right on the. So that was what came up. I haven't like dug too deep into the connections with that, but that book and that concept feels like so linked to, if we were talking about like the reversal of this card or what it would mean to disrupt the energy of oppression, it is, I think, like that stillness and that hope, not in the sense of like struggle, but in like the clarity of like letting go.
Because oppression relies on that clawing, and you can't claw at things if you're napping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes me think about how the concept of laziness being a capitalist invention of like, it's not laziness, it's wanting to rest, it's needing rest, like humans rest. And the the oppression of the LinkedIn grind set.
Oh my God.
Like, God.
Or any social media grind set.
Any social media grind set. It's worst on the worst on LinkedIn, I think. But I've been on LinkedIn a lot lately because of work and job searching and stuff. But that is the root of American oppression. That hustle is that clawing.
And it is nuts. And like, this is what this book kind of explores a lot too, is like and I think that when I think about oppression and the state of the collapsing empire, that this like entire system and country was like founded on like stolen labor and stolen land and like all the efforts of people who were in communion with the land and each other. And then like to have this outside force come in and like take that and use it for other means. And like, that's the whole legacy. Like, and it's like not surprising to see the state of so many things now, given that is the roots of like so much of what we're dealing with.
And the mechanism of it has been so soulless too. Like, the state of Virginia is called the state of Virginia because of the Virginia Company. It was a company before it was a state.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, the colonies, like the colonies were here to establish business. Like, this has all been about business the whole time. Like, we have this really fun narrative of like escaping religious oppression, and like, nah, dude, they were sent to the colonies to work for the East India Trading Company, which, God, I forgot who it was. He's an actor, but he was a guest on Duncan Trussell. Anyway, he has this like, I believe he's writing a book on it or doing a documentary. There should be much more better information coming out about it soon, but he talks about how like the U.S. was founded as a company. It like was started to bolster like it was a big part in bolstering the slave trade. Mm-hmm. Originally, the East India Trading Company attempted slavery, and then everyone was like, that's fucked up. What are you doing? So they like closed their doors for like 30 years or some shit like that. And during that time, they came out with like pseudoscientist propagandists to like race bait, basically. And like, bring out all this bad science, like phrenology and like the theological end of it. Yeah, to justify it. The theological end of it being like, Black people or Africa is subject to demons, and it's up to us to like liberate them from that.
That's a good example of projection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking
all those demons.
All those demons like, over there.
Oh.
We got to get them out of here so we can get the money. We got to get the money and the blood and the money. Anyway, this country has been soulless from the beginning, and oppression is built right into it. So maybe that's why this was such a hard card to like grapple with initially, because it's so ingrained that it's hardly outside of anything. You need a water break? I'm oppressing Crowley right now. He's clawing to get out, but my 2 bars of Saturn are wrapped around him.
That's the reverse of this card, is a hug.
Yeah. Well, it's just a hug. Maybe our oppressors are just hugging us.
Too hard.
Just a little too hard. Trying to give us a good squeeze. And
did you ever see that episode of Futurama where Bender is God?
Bender's God.
It's a really good episode overall, but there's one part where there's like a little child, and he's like, there's like a flood, and he's like, hold on. He's like, I can't, my arms are too tired from hugging.
Oh, yeah. Where he was a god in like Egypt or something like that?
No, he goes into space, and he's like a surface upon which people are living. So he's like, oh, well, let me turn around so there's more sun so they can have good crops, and then it like burns.
Oh,
so he turns too much, and then he's like, oh, we'll bring water, and then it floods, and that was when the little kid dies, and he's like, I can't do anything right. And then actual God.
And then he meets actual God.
Yeah, so it's kind of actually like he's like the demiurge. I feel like is that The parallel there.
Oh, that's a good one. I hope that got caught. That was a good little bit.
It was a good bit.
Going on a tangent with that a little bit is I remember we were talking about the demiurge as the god that thinks it's God. And then when Bender meets the real God, it like doesn't really know that it's God. It's just like, I don't know, I'm just here.
Yep. And when you do things right, people hardly know that you did anything at all.
That's a damn good one. That's one that stuck with me. What a great show.
They're bringing it back again. It's been canceled like many times.
This is like the third time,
At least.
third or fourth time
Like
they're reviving it,
fourth
right?
or fifth, I feel like.
Jesus. Crowley, you are super clawing right now. You're so oppressed.
I'm so oppressed.
All right, so we talked about the cabal of the card a little bit. We talked about the imagery. We sure as hell talked about some personal experiences around it.
We did. I'm thinking about the metaphor that Lon Milo Duquette had about poor Sagittarius being pinned brutally by Saturn's iron boot to Malkuth. And I'm thinking about like your wacky professor imagery. I guess another aspect I was thinking about is like we've talked a bunch about the external elements of oppression and that kind of duality. But I guess it was a couple nights this week, I was like caught up in writing and I was like getting stuff done. And I was like, this feels really good. I'm in a creative flow. And I just like wanted to keep going, even though I was like tired and fried. And I was thinking about like also how in a system of oppression, we like internalize that to our own selves. And Rest is Resistance talks about this too, but like, how do we internalize like oppression to like our own bodies, our own like parts of self, to keep like grinding ourselves down, like your coworker getting hustle tattooed on his body. Yeah, like the oppressive relationship we get conditioned into with our own body, and unlearning that, I guess. Like how do we unlearn that system within ourselves while like the outer system still seems to enforce it?
Yeah, because I know for me, definitely, like, even though I intellectually know Rest is Resistance as an example of like the concept, I sure do get anxious when I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
When I'm not being productive. When I'm not being productive to capitalism's standards or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good. So do you have a solution or thoughts around like how one can address that kind of thing?
I mean, I think like obviously being aware is like the first step.
Sure.
But as far as like disrupting that, I mean, I think that's the trick, isn't it? I think the kind of magic of it is like understanding ourselves as like a microcosm. So how I think like picking something that is very tangible to do that disrupts that, and then trying to track like how does this actually like ripple out into the world? It's like, can I see the impact of this in like my interactions with other people or the things that come into my life when I don't treat myself this way?
Yeah, awareness is the first step in that for sure.
And then in the card, the two bars that are oppressive in the Ten of Wands are the Two of Wands, or are the two bars from the Two of Wands, which is Dominion, I believe.
Oh.
So it's kind of like the difference between like Dominion, I think of as like sovereignty.
They are.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. They have the points at the bottom, and then they think they have the same like Ginny heads.
Yeah. So it's kind of the difference between like this lust of result, like total devolution into the 10, but initially the roots of it are in this kind of like that higher like supernal triad with the twos, of being like actually very okay with duality, that there are going to be these ebbs and flows. And
being kind of stoked about that,
yeah,
too.
being like stoked about it. Like, okay, well, like I recognize that I'm in burnout now and like I'm going to rest. And like the more that you accept that that is the cycle, and like that's, I guess, also what we could take all of the heaviness of like oppression as well, as like, well, we're at the end now. What's going to come next? Or like, I'm excited for the collapse. And like, because of the scale of it, it's very difficult to do that. Like there's a lot of like fear kind of begetting fear. So it's very difficult to be stoked about, you know, America's Pluto return, I think, is what we're really in the thick of now. So it's like, stop.
Is he being a dick?
You being mean. It's just being hard teeth.
Give him a scruff if he... That usually calms him down a little bit.
Just immediately rest. So yeah, like the idea of dominion versus... Like this feels like the difference between like dominion and domination. Like this is like,
yeah.
I can get what I need to get done. There's force, there's direction, and this is like the lust of result. Like I don't care what you want. I don't care what's good for the whole. Yeah. I'm just on this kind of war path.
I'm going to do whatever it takes to get the thing that I want, the result of what I need.
Even so far divorced from maybe even any like higher will.
This is like Elon Musk when he started with, well, no, he's probably always been a piece of shit, to be honest. But like the image we had of him when Tesla started up of like, wow, this guy is cool and he's going to like bring electric cars to everybody. And let's just say that there was a great intention there and an excitement down to like this luster result of like, I need to own everything and like hoard everything. I think the whole scam has been to get him to Mars the whole time, which
and leave him there.
I hope so. Two of Wands is ruled by Mars.
Yeah.
I often think about, well, I thought it was going to be Amazon, but like Amazon Prime indentured servitude. Like you can go to Mars too when the world's fucked up, but like you're going to be an indentured servant there because you don't have money to buy that ticket.
Yeah, you're going to be like living in an Amazon pod, using your Amazon credits to get your Amazon microwave meal, and then you go to work at Amazon to earn your credits.
Yep.
It's like some Black Mirror stuff going on.
Your credits that you can only spend at Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon Mars.
Amazon Mars. It's going to be Amazon the corporation long after the Amazon the forest.
Oh, yeah.
Just brutal.
Future archaeologists are going to think that Amazon was some kind of god. Which I heard something recently about how the gods in ancient polytheistic societies like ancient Egypt functioned as corporations, kind of. Or not corporations exactly, but like if you like needed to get something written out, like you needed a scribe, you would go to the Temple of Thoth and like pay a scribe from there. I'm going to butcher this concept. I think it's in one of Noah Yuval Harari's books, though. He talks about this idea. I keep coming to this podcast with like half-baked concepts. I'm like, I heard this thing one time, and it kind of reminds me of this other thing.
This is a hard one. Yeah, our brains are like a little sludgy.
We're in the 10 of Wands, the two of us. I'm burning out. I'm feeling relationship stuff right now. We have the whole political environment that we're in. And you have a whole thing that's been oppressing you for a while and just like clawing at your little whatever bits of cognizance you have, and burnout. Sounds like that's coming at you too.
A little bit of burnout, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think like the interesting interplay, I guess, like is the awareness of like the self-oppression of like how much how much should I like use this person to hurt my own feelings, which is like a little bit, I like worry about the spiritual bypassing of like, oh, like everything is fine and it's my fault, because it's like very easy to just like blame ourselves, I think, as like a default. But then there's also like the flip side of like the agency of like taking responsibility for like, okay, what was my part in this? Like, I think all situations, many of them are co-created. But yeah, the idea of like, how did I use this to hurt my own feeling? Like, stop hitting yourself with the...
You're hitting yourself with that.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's the other thing. Like, you're hitting yourself with that own concept of like, oh, well, why can't you just take responsibility? Because that's like just like shitty self-gaslighting. Sometimes people are just shitty. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that's like the key to like toppling over through the 10 of Wands, is like letting yourself be fucking mad. Like, it's okay to be fucking mad and be like, damn, like maybe I fucked up a little, but I didn't deserve that.
Yeah, I mean, well, in your situation in particular, like we were talking about this beforehand, but I'll fill everyone else in to a degree. Lux had a falling out with someone, and they were saying, oh, I'd said this thing and I really regret it, and I feel bad. And they told me about it, and I'm like, that's not that bad. This person is being like really overreacting to like your moment of being pushed to the edge. Like, that wasn't a thing that you didn't like explode. Well, like, I wouldn't even say you exploded on them, which was you made it sound like.
I didn't even realize I hadn't like talked to you about the details, and then it must have been so built up in your head.
Yeah. I thought you were like being intentionally vague because it was like
so bad.
Yeah, bad.
It felt like it, because when someone's response to you is like that, you have a sense to internalize like, wow, like did I really deserve that? And it takes like time and like other people to like reflect back like, no, like, nope. Any like other people could have navigated that with you, and it was just yeah.
Like, this person did not want to engage in conflict at all. Mm-hmm. They like.
Evaporated.
Some conflict came up. They're like, nope.
A little bit of heat
this.
And just immediately evaporated. Yeah. Like, I'm gone. And I was just like, wow. And it's like, I really do struggle with how much conflict is like demonized, because like, I think so much growth comes from conflict and like being willing to engage with that. And if you're constantly afraid that someone doesn't have those chops and you like hold back, then they're not really ever getting like a real version of you, and you're not ever getting to grow together.
And like, do you really want to be around people who don't have those chops too? Like,
yeah, I mean, like, this is like the overly compassionate. So this is like another, like, I guess, like shadow reversal side of it is like, if you're avoiding, oh, I don't want to be mean, like, I don't want to be cruel, I don't want to be oppressive, like, then you are this like defanged version that is, yeah, there's no like authenticity there. There's like a vulnerability from being willing to like go there with someone, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I like what you said about conflict being a path of growth. Like, in my life, I know that conflict in relation with other people, I guess conflict in general, comes from a disparity between needs. Yeah. I feel like. So if you're not engaging with conflict, you're not engaging with your needs. If you are or like on the other side of it, you're not engaging with someone else's needs, and that's like not a relationship. That's a dominion.
Yeah. Or like, I think of it as like an affiliation at best. Like, you're sort of around each other, but are you like relating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're not having for lack of a better term, intercourse. There's like no like exchange. Yeah. And like, I mean, who doesn't love intercourse?
I mean, you don't have to tell me twice.
Yeah.
Like, I think like, and like, I think there's sort of this really interesting, like erotic component to conflict, which is I think why, like, I think of it so much through the kink lens, is that like they're an existential kink lens. Because like that unwillingness to go to that space of vulnerability of like friction is literally like what makes intercourse enjoyable is like the fact that you're like, rubbing against each other a little bit and trying to navigate, you know, where do I end and this other person begin? And that sort of like metaphor and symbolism in even just like your interactions with another person are to me like very similar. Like I don't have a sort of like judgment of like, oh, that's too much, or like I would just want to respect someone enough to be able to communicate on that level with me. And it's weird. Like I think it's like strange. I sort of like not everyone is there. Like just not everyone is there.
I wonder how much of that is related to like cultural sexual suppression too. Like,
probably a lot.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if we can't
like a little bit of ribbing, you know?
There's got it like, because good sex needs communication too. You need to be able to like say when something doesn't feel good, or like say when something feels really good and ask for more of that without feeling greedy.
Yeah.
Shit. Yeah. That kind of sent me on a like, fuck, how much of our like conflict avoidance is that? And
is like sexual suppression, suppression of like the erotic, of like not knowing and being willing to ask or, you know, communicate.
And I feel like that takes the like the love out of it too. Not necessarily romantic love, but like
actual love.
Like agape love.
Yeah.
Like, love. Like how can you like say that you love someone if you're not accepting their conflict, their needs, their like
the friction.
Yeah. And if you're not willing to like work that out, to like try to come to a resolution, like, wow. Yeah. It's a big concept to chew on.
It is. Yeah. And I think like that's like my own sort of skepticism that I carry, because like I do think that there is an aspect of love that should be present in like most close relationships, whatever like label those have. Like there's like a basic level of like willingness to navigate conflict and communicate and respect and like understanding and grace for people figuring stuff out and being willing to be there for that I'm like, this is one of my like, am I being paranoid? Like maybe everyone does. And it's like, no, like actually there's like a very large deficit and like ability to teach people these skills that, yeah, if everyone were functioning on that level, we would live in a very different world.
Yeah. And I think that also speaks to like the fear of love in the world too. Like you can't just tell someone you love them. Like there's a huge like vulnerability factor that comes up with that. I mean, I guess you could. I mean, people do. Mm-hmm. But I feel like a lot of the times when that comes up, it's like maybe a little disingenuous when people are a little too liberal with throwing out the I love yous. Maybe they do legitimately like love everyone that much, but also like to the degree that like we don't say to our friends, I love, well, a lot of people don't say I love you to their friends that much. Mm-hmm. Or like, there's a hesitancy to like say I love you in a relationship too early on or something, where like we have a very narrow defined version of love that we're talking about. And like love is so much more than like just this like weird obsessive romantic thing that we've been kind of tricked into believing it is.
Yeah, I think that fear is really present, and it is a fear of like the same intimacy that we think like intimacy has been relegated to this like erotic realm, and it's sort of code for that. But like the things that are present in like a love relationship, whether that's like of any sort, are that same kind of intimacy, I think, of like respect and communication.
Yeah.
So I kind of yeah, it's kind of it's almost like a language barrier to try to like communicate with someone on that level, and they think it's about sex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which brings to mind the thought about how, I forgot where I heard it, but someone said that the opposite of love is not hate, but apathy.
Yeah, indifference.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that a lot, actually. That specific concept. Yep.
Say more. If you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I like it's like what you said about the fear of like saying I love you like too soon, of caring too much. Like you're always going to be like it's. I feel like I have so much of my like growth and healing and like personal development has been in like the willingness to be vulnerable. Like I think that's like kind of the holy grail of when we think about like healthy self-concept and healthy relationships, is like, are you willing to like open yourself up? Because that's how like people can actually connect with you.
Yeah.
And I feel like I had kind of like an insular, like COVID happened and I had a pretty insular like social circle. So I think it was easy to get a little cocky and be like, yeah, like I can be myself and I don't care what people think. And then once you start to actually kind of test drive that a little more, you realize like, oh, it actually is kind of scary. Like those things that I like had to process, like there's reasons that those were there. And then you have to kind of reconfront, caring what other people think, and like, navigating like what you think of yourself versus what other people think of you. And that, yeah, like uncomfortable spot of like, well, I do care. And like, it actually is like kind of unsettling to be the person who like cares more, and realize like, okay, like indifference is very like painful. Like indifference is kind of like also at the root of this card too, like of oppression. Like there's an indifference of like, I want what I want. I don't care. I don't care about you. I don't care about involving you.
Yeah, there is an indifference to the lust of result, like, and not caring about the journey around it, the environment that it takes place within. Which that's something I can like definitely stand to remember more, especially in the context of like magic, but in life too. Like it's not the destination; it's the trip to get there. Like there's a lot of truth to that. If you can enjoy the journey or the environment to getting to where you want to be, like it's going to be so much better and you'll get so much more out of that experience than if you're just like single-mindedly focused on the result.
Yeah.
So I guess, let's wrap this one up with maybe some keywords around oppression. Oppression being a good keyword for it.
Oppression, repression, suppression, depression,
clawing was the one that came up quite a bit. Grasping, clawing.
Despondence was the name in the Rust Belt. Actually, I can add real quick the Rust Belt.
Oh yeah, let's talk about the Rust Belt. What is the imagery for that one show?
So the Rust Belt's 10 of Wands, called Despondence, is Quercus alba, a white oak. And I don't know, it's always interesting with decks that are not traditional imagery and not Kabbalah at all, but kind of off the beaten path ones, because you sort of wonder how much it was like intentional imagery, or did they just sort of put a tree on it?
Something that.
But when I was doing my
Lux is dying, everyone.
I'm dying. We
only got a few episodes of this left.
No, we have to get through all 78. When I was doing my ecology research, the white oak was kind of a big player because...
You drink a lot of whiskey? A lot of bourbon?
Does that come from white oaks?
The barrels are made out of white oak.
Oh,
exclusively.
Interesting. I'll think about that. No, we did not. Some of my professors got fucked up off the bug ethanol, but that's a different story. The super strong ethanol, you preserve stuff.
Oh.
it makes you go blind, so don't do that. But if you drink too much. I was studying like ecosystem stability And white oaks are really important because a lot of things eat them. So the professor I was working with was very into basically teaching people how to have ecologically stable yards, because we have a perception that like bugs are bad, you don't want them eating your plants, and like all of the rest of nature is sort of like that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Plants are not existing to be decorative objects. They're actually really important basis of the food web. And the white oak is really important because like something like 500 different lepidopteran species use that as like a primary food source. So if you plant one white oak in your yard, you're doing like a really good thing ecologically, essentially. So it's interesting to see this come up here because if we're thinking about collapse and like burden, it was just interesting to think about like if you were to remove this species, what kind of collapse would happen? And then also on the reverse side of that, how is it not noble, but like needed sometimes to like bear the burden of like so many things relying on you, of carrying the weight. Like for a tree, we don't really like think of it in like a animate humanistic way of like the tree is not really burdened by so many things needing it. It sort of just exists, and it's just happened to evolve in such a way where lots of different things can benefit from its kind of existence in that way. So yeah, I just was kind of ruminating on the role of support, I guess. In oppression. Support as kind of like the non-shadow side of oppression. Like when things feel heavy, you can be oppressed by them, and also you can think like how am I supporting, or how can I be supported in this feeling?
It does evoke the Sagittarius or Saturn and Sagittarius thing for me too, because like it's the giving tree. Like the giving tree was an apple tree, but like it's a giving tree.
It is the giving tree.
It gives so much to like the world around it, and then the human interaction with it.
It's brutal and extractive.
It's pretty brutal. Yeah, like we're cutting it up for barrels for bourbon. Like I was saying, I think there is like not exactly a shortage yet, but they're like, we need to be like really careful about how we're proceeding with the bourbon industry because of white oaks. I'm sure that's not the only thing that humans use white oak for either. Like, I know that, well, this is more so this isn't actually as extractive, but I know it's used for dyes and fixatives, when they get those burrs. Or oak galls, I think is what they're called. Lumber, I'm sure it's a source of that. Like a nice oak cabinet, I think I've heard people say before. Yeah, so it's like this giving, expansive thing, literally expansive. They're usually huge.
Yes.
And they grow out with their branches extending farther than you would think. That's one thing I really like about oak trees is like how their branches go so long, and you're like, that physically looks like it should be like tipping down or like breaking off or something, but it's just reaching out there. Being oppressed by humanity's lust of result.
And it's wild because if you think about like it as like a generalist, like all of the species that would rely on it are not responsible necessarily for killing off. Like they're not, like in a balanced ecosystem, it's okay that so many things rely on this particular species. And yet in like an extractive mindset, it does become, that's when it's an issue, is it's too much.
We're so out of balance.
Yeah, man.
Humans. Well, that was a fun upper to bring back around.
Yeah, the giving tree. That's
the giving tree being oppressed. Just beating the shit out of the giving tree with like a big black iron bar.
Yeah.
Or two.
That it's funny to think of that loop in with the wacky professor too, because my professor who I worked with for that research was very much the quirky professor. Like he didn't believe in screens in his house because he read that they like reduce. I think actually his wife said that like they reduce airflow by like some amount that was like unacceptable.
You mean like mesh screens?
Yeah,
or?
like
Okay,
like
gotcha.
window screens. So they had like stuff that could just come in their house. He's like, yeah, I found like a wasp nest in the bathroom once, but they're fine. They're not bothering anyone. They lived on like this big piece of like former farmland that they were like basically rewilding, like turning back into like native forest land.
Hell yeah.
And like he found like a bird in his shoe one morning, like because there were no screens. So he's a cool guy.
Sounds like it.
So he's very, very in tune with ecological balance, as we could all hope to be.
Yeah. I don't know how much I'd like a wasp nest in my
Maybe not. Yeah, it was a little bit
but
much.
like it's pretty whimsical to find a bird in your shoe
It
in the
is,
morning.
Yeah, very whimsical.
I was just rewatching, or like it came up in one of the things in my mindless scrolling of the bird landing on Bernie's podium back in like 2016.
Whoa.
How far we've come from that.
This is like a whole other world. 2016.
I feel like that was like a like timeline jump or something.
Yes.
Where like
we
had-
diverged.
Yeah.
There was a divergence.
There was a sign there, like, and then we years later got the fly on Mike Pence's head just to like really seal the deal on that one of like, yeah, this is where you could have been. This is where you are. Fuck. So that's oppression, everyone.
Yeah, so that feels like a wrap on oppression.
Yeah.
Sure, we could ruminate, but
I'm anxious to get the fuck out of it.
we can move on. So we don't have a random pull for our next one. We're resuming our major arcana journey. So that will feel a little bit grounding and stable, I think, to go back in our journey. So we've done the Fool, the Magus, and
Now we have the High Priestess.
The High Priestess will be our next card.
Which I like this card. I like that archetype. I like the Path of Gimel. Yeah, we're gonna have fun with that one. It won't be as trudging as this episode.
This was trudging as AF. Yes. Well, I think that about wraps it up for the Ten of Wands.
Thank God.
That was a heavy card to explore, but we had some good dives into the shadowy aspects of oppression and cruelty.
Yeah, and I feel like I somehow have more compassion for oppression as a concept, having recognized its clawing desperation. I also really enjoyed our tangent on love and conflict.
Yeah, the silver lining of some of these more challenging cards is realizing their place in cycles of growth and change, so I'm really glad we got to get there with this one.
I'm looking forward to next time when we get into the maybe not warm, but embrace of the High Priestess.
There's definitely a cool stillness and intuitive magic to the High Priestess that will be a relief after this card.
Fucking A. With that, I hope we didn't scare you away and that you, our dear listener, will join us next time as we take the long road that is the Path of Gimel.
As we get ready to traverse the abyss with you, please keep in touch by finding us on Instagram and Blue Sky at The Feral Tarot, or send us an email at theferaltarotpodcast@gmail.com.
Until then, I'm Nemo Blank.
And I'm Lux Pharos.
Stay feral, friends.
friends.